In 1830, a cat unknowingly changed the course of European history. Now you might be scratching your head wondering how a feline creature could possibly spark a revolution. Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive into one of the most bizarre incidents in European history. In the heart of the 19th century, the Kingdom of Belgium was a part of the Netherlands, under Dutch rule. However, things were about to change, all thanks to a cat. This was no ordinary cat, mind you. This cat belonged to a Belgian diplomat, and it had a knack for wandering off into Dutch territory. One day, this adventurous cat strayed a little too far from home and ended up in the Netherlands. The Belgian diplomat, missing his feline friend, politely requested the return of his beloved pet. Seems like a simple enough request, right? Well, not for the Dutch authorities. They flat out refused to return the cat. This refusal did not go down well with the Belgians. What started as a petty dispute over a lost cat escalated into a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Tensions between the Belgians and the Dutch mounted, and before long, Belgium declared independence from the Netherlands. This triggered a conflict known as the Belgian Revolution, where Belgium fought for and won its independence. In a strange twist of fate, a lost cat had managed to spark a revolution and change the course of European history. This story just goes to show how seemingly insignificant events can have a massive impact on the world. So the next time your cat goes missing, remember it might just be out there starting a revolution. Traffic jams are annoying, right? But have you heard about the ingenious solution the nobles of 17th century Paris came up with? Let's take a step back in time, when the grand city of Paris was a hotbed of noble power plays and horse-drawn carriages. The city's narrow winding streets were often choked with the grand carriages of aristocrats, leading to gridlocks that would make a modern-day commuter cringe. To deal with this growing problem, King Louis XIV, in his infinite wisdom, issued a royal decree. Every noble had to register their carriage and display a numbered metal plate on it. Seems fair, right? But the nobles, being the crafty lot they were, found a loophole to protest this decree in the most comical way possible. Instead of registering their carriages, these witty nobles registered their chamber pots. Yes, you heard that right. The pots they used as toilets. Suddenly, the streets of Paris were filled with numbered chamber pots instead of carriages. This act of rebellion was a clear message to the king, highlighting the absurdity of his decree in a way that was hard to ignore. This humorous protest came to be known as the Pot de Chambre Rebellion. And it wasn't just a rebellion against the king's decree. It was also a rebellion against the status quo, against the pomp and circumstance of the nobility, against the very idea of control. In the end, the king's well-intentioned but poorly executed decree led to a bizarre and unforgettable chapter in the city's history. The Pot de Chambre Rebellion became a symbol of the nobles' defiance and their knack for turning even the most mundane objects into tools of protest. So the next time you're stuck in a traffic jam, spare a thought for the 17th century Parisians. They might not have had honking horns and bumper-to-bumper traffic, but they certainly had their share of transport troubles. And their solution? It's a story that's as hilarious as it is historical. And that, folks, is how Paris ended up with a rebellion of numbered chamber pots. Fashion trends can be quite bizarre, but have you heard about the hoop skirt trend that got women fined in the 19th century? Yes, you heard that right. We're stepping into a time machine, going back to the 19th century, when a peculiar fashion trend was sweeping Europe, the hoop skirts. Now, these weren't your regular skirts. They were so wide that they posed quite a challenge for the ladies. Doorways became mortal enemies, and sitting down, well, let's just say it was a task easier said than done. This fashion fiasco did not stop at the shores of Europe. It traveled across the Atlantic and invaded the United States, specifically the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The hoop skirt trend reached such dizzying heights, or should we say widths, that it became a public nuisance. Imagine trying to navigate the sidewalks with these voluminous skirts everywhere. You'd need a traffic controller just for the pedestrians. And what does any self-respecting city do when faced with a fashion emergency of such proportions? They pass a law, of course, and that's exactly what the Michigan State Legislature did in 1856. They enacted a law that imposed a fine of $5 on any woman caught wearing a hoop skirt on the streets of Grand Rapids. Yes, you could be fined for your fashion choices. Talk about a fashion police, eh? It's amusing to think about how the world has changed since then. Today, we celebrate personal expression and individuality in fashion. But back then, a hoop skirt could have cost you a pretty penny, literally. So, the next time you're out shopping and you see something that's a little out there, a little bold, a little different, remember the ladies of Grand Rapids and their hoop skirts. It might just put things in perspective, so remember, fashion is subjective, but make sure it doesn't land you with a fine. We've all heard of shocking medical treatments, but nothing quite beats the electrifying remedies of the Victorian era. Picture this. You're living in the age of Queen Victoria, and you go to the doctor with a nagging backache. Instead of a bottle of aspirin or a hot water bottle, you're handed an electric belt. Yes, you heard that right, an electric belt. This was not some sort of Victorian-era fashion statement. No, these belts were advertised as a cure-all for a wide array of ailments. From back pain to impotence, from indigestion to depression, there seemed to be no malady that these electric belts couldn't tackle. The premise was simple. These belts would deliver mild electric shocks to the body, thereby stimulating blood flow and healing the afflicted area. Sounds pretty shocking, doesn't it? Well, that's exactly what it was. Quite literally. Instead of curing ailments, these belts often ended up surprising their wearers more than anything else. Imagine going about your day minding your own business when suddenly, zap, a jolt of electricity shoots through your body, and it gets even better. Or should I say even more electrifying. Some of these belts were designed to be worn overnight, so just as you're slipping into a peaceful slumber, you'd be rudely awakened by a shock to your system. Talk about a wake-up call. But don't think that the Victorians were alone in their love for electricity. Oh no, these electric belts were all the rage across the globe. From London to New York, from Paris to Sydney, people were strapping on these belts in hopes of finding relief from their ailments. But despite their popularity, these electric belts were not the miracle cure they were made out to be. In fact, they were about as effective as a rubber duck in a thunderstorm. So the next time you feel a bit under the weather, be grateful you're not being prescribed an electric belt. In the courtroom, justice is blind, but in the 1800s it was also a bit furry. The century was peppered with a rather unique trend, one that would make even the most hardened lawyer raise an eyebrow. Animal trials. Yes, you heard that right. Animals from pigs to insects were put on the stand and tried for their supposed crimes. The most memorable case among these bizarre trials involved a pig right in the heart of France. This wasn't any ordinary pig, mind you. This pig was accused of a heinous crime, murder. The victim, a small child. The verdict, guilty as charged. The pig was sentenced to death by hanging. A hanging pig. It's enough to make you question your grip on reality. But our porcine protagonist wasn't ready to meet its maker just yet. The pig, showcasing a surprising amount of cunning for a farm animal, managed to escape before its execution could be carried out. Can you imagine the scene? The executioner, red-faced and panting, chasing a pig through the streets of France. It sounds more like a scene from a slapstick comedy than a solemn execution. This pig's daring escape led to the phrase, "as happy as a pig in clover." Because, if there's anything happier than a pig in clover, it's a pig that's just escaped the hangman's noose. So, if you're ever feeling down, just remember, at least you're not a pig on trial. While Europe was dealing with the Black Death, China was busy discovering new lands. Let's sail back to the 15th century, where China's Ming Dynasty was crafting colossal treasure ships, dwarfing any European vessel of the time. Commanded by the renowned Admiral Zheng He, these ships were not just floating on the sea, they were exploring the world, establishing diplomatic relations and discovering new lands. All while Europe was just trying to survive a pandemic.